You're listening to the Red V podcast with Jack Clifton and Johnny Pett here in episode 85. Big thanks for everyone that has tuned in and sent in their questions, particularly for the next little segment we have here on the podcast. We've got Ryan Webb, the CEO of the St. George Illawarra Dragons, on the line. I've had opportunity to chat to Ryan a couple of times here on the podcast and always appreciate him giving up his time to give us a bit of an insight into what's happening, I guess, inside the four walls of the club, particularly at board level and different things that are happening, I guess, through all this COVID drama as well. Ryan's been kind enough to give up his afternoon and chat a little bit more in depth about the St. George Illawarra Dragons. Ryan, how are you doing this afternoon, mate?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Jack.
I guess first off, Ryan, as a lot of people that are listening are in areas of Sydney that are locked down, and obviously St. George Illawarra are no different to any of the other clubs that have been affected by the lockdown. What's the club's financial position at the moment, with the fact that I think the St. George Leagues Club and the Steelers Club down south have both had their doors shut for several weeks now?
Yeah, we're not in a precarious position. I guess that's the best way to put it. Remembering that our two owners now are St. George Leagues Club there, but also Burkett or Win Television rather than the Steelers. So both our shareholders there are in pretty reasonable financial positions, I guess. So there's no concerns there. But as a club, like all clubs, your revenues have taken a pretty major hit through the back end of the year. So yeah, we'll probably be somewhere between 1.5 and 2 million down, maybe a bit more in our revenues. But you offset a bit of that with your expenses because you're not running your game days, you're not servicing your corporates. So it's not a pure hit, I guess. We set ourselves up pretty well last year. We were pretty tight with our spending when COVID hit the first time. We shaved right back. We had to pare back, I guess, on staff hours, and we've done that a little bit here too. But they're just things that a lot of people have to do at this time. So I think essentially our revenues have taken a hit, but we've been smart enough with our spending over the last 18 months that we're going to be okay. We'll get through this year, and hopefully we won't be recording big losses. But we're nowhere near where we wanted to be and where we were hoping to be and budgeting to be. But we're okay in that sense.
Ryan, a lot has happened since we last spoke, most notably the barbecue that obviously saw the end of the tenure of Paul Vaughan at the club and a whole bunch of players, I think 12 in total, that got suspensions. No doubt yourself and Anthony Griffin were very disappointed, and us Dragons fans certainly felt that when we saw the way that you guys spoke to the press in the aftermath of that. But I guess in a wider, more branching look at what happened there, how does the club stop things and I guess culture issues like that from happening again?
Yeah, I think there's two parts you could probably look at. So from a cultural perspective, I didn't like people trying to say that the club had a bad culture, because I don't think that was fair on the majority of the players, all the staff we have around, the dozens and dozens of staff who are all pushing in the right direction and doing the right thing. But then at the same time, you can't sit there and ignore something like that because obviously there's an issue. So there's a cultural piece there that we're addressing, I suppose. And I think that started by the club acting so swiftly and strongly at the time. And the fact that everyone from the board down to the boot starter, I guess, everyone was in line with the path that we took there. I think that was the first step. In the punishments that we handed out, the NRL went out fairly strong financially. But what we did with the players was more around, there's a financial piece here, but we've got to make sure people are learning from this. We've got to make sure they understand that these actions don't just affect them as players and the team on the field. It affects everyone. It affects the sponsors and the members and the people who are taking phone calls at the club and all this. So we had a number of initiatives raised at, punishment's probably the word, but they were there to educate, I guess, and then hopefully, one, these players learn their lesson well, and two, hopefully they go from there and learn to a point where they, I guess, correct their behaviour and lead in a sense. So that was one part I think we were looking at. The players, I'd say, who were involved have taken their punishments on the chin. Like, none of them tried to shirk the issue or anything like that, which you wouldn't expect them to, and you'd hope they wouldn't. But I'd say out of what we've done, a lot of them have actually come back now and they're asking and being proactive and saying what else we can do, how else can we help sponsors, a couple of the boys have talked about how they can connect with junior football, and there's a lot of trust we've got to rebuild, and that's going to take a while. But I think there was two parts to this. Sorry to answer your question with such a long answer, but there's also a point here where we couldn't, in talking to Anthony too, allow this to become an excuse for on-field performance. I don't think we can deny that it had an effect, but you couldn't use it as an excuse, because that's not fair to anyone either. That's punishing fans and members and everyone else as well. So I think from a club perspective, for the team, probably drew a line in the sand a few weeks ago, the guys up in Queensland, and said, you just have to move on now and just focus on winning games. But from a club perspective, there hasn't been that line in the sand. There's still a lot of work that we're going to need to do across a number of areas. So that's how we've addressed it. It's not finished yet, but if we can't look back in the future and look back at this as a learning point and something that made us stronger culturally, then we know better. Like we need to make sure we learn from this.
The last 6 weeks on the field haven't been as glossy as I'm sure that the club would have wanted. I guess when you're looking at the whole season and some of the advancements being made under Anthony and the rest of the coaching staff, if the Dragons don't win another game this season, Ryan, does 2021 in your book go down as a successful season?
Oh, I don't think you're going to be going down as a successful season. I think we expected to be playing finals, and that's at a minimum, and I think we had the team to do it, and we actually showed on field that we have the ability there too. So successful, far from that. The biggest piece I think I take from it is our biggest issue seems to be ourselves. Like we seem to put the hurdles in front of ourselves, whether it's the off-field behaviour or maybe the on-field discipline at times letting us down. We seem to, or just the ability to play a solid 80 minutes. A lot of the hurdles that are in front of us, we've put there ourselves. So in working with Anthony and the football department and the club as a whole, I think we'll find ways to address that, because 2021 wasn't successful. It's not a pass mark, but and we need to be better. But that's not going to happen by accident. So we're going to have to be fairly strategic in the way and open and honest in the way we address this.
Is there a review planned for the end of the season, Ryan?
No, not a review as such. I think reviews looking backwards don't really help. I think we just need to understand a bit of a plan on what sort of football team we want to be and what sort of club we want to be and how we're going to get there. So we were making some great strides. I think we showed glimpses, but we need to do it consistently. We need to bring in the right players and the right systems and the right supports around that. So I wouldn't say a review as such, but just some really good planning running into 22.
What stage next year or at the latter part of this year do you take a look at Anthony Griffin's contract and a potential upgrade or extension, Ryan? His contract to the end of 2022, is that something that I guess balloons into next year and you're waiting for results to come before you make a decision on that?
Look, that's something that the board will have a really big say in, and it hasn't been discussed yet. Anthony's is contracted to the end of 22, but it's a club option for 23. So at the right time, that discussion will be had, but it hasn't been mentioned yet.
We've seen the club make some moves in recruitments this season. George Burgess, Jaden Sewer, Francis Molo, just some of the names coming to the Dragons. I know you won't be able to be specific about potential players that you're chasing, but are the Dragons still in the transfer market for a few more players before, I guess, the 2022 preseason and the 2022 season regular starts up, Ryan?
Yeah, definitely are. And I think Moses Emba is on that list as well. So as far as the ones already locked in to come here. So he was brought in obviously to help Andrew McCulloch out at hooker and give us a bit of depth around a lot of those positions our young outside backs are probably playing at the moment. So strategically bringing in big bodies and then some support in areas we need. We still have a few spots left on the list for next year, and we still have a decent amount of money for that as well. So in a similar fashion to last year, we're not going to go out and spend and overspend, I think. Anytime you're recruiting, it's always a balance, I guess, risk and reward. And what player you're getting in, do you want to spend overs on it? Do you think there's upside? How can you negotiate? A good player who's had a bad year, you might be able to get at a bit of better value, or a good player that's flying, you might have to spend overs. But it really just depends on where your club's at. But I guess, in short, we have spots on our list. We have a decent amount of money to bring in, I think, at 2, probably 3 solid to very good players. And we're just going to keep an eye out on the market. And we're active right now, constantly active, and we're working on one at the moment. So hopefully, these things can go either way. I wouldn't want to call anything too early, but hopefully we'll have some good news in a week or two as well.
Ryan, how much say does Anthony get in the recruitment process? Because we know previously when Paul McGregor was coach, that was kind of taken away from him a little bit. Is Anthony kind of at the focal point of some of these recruitment decisions with the players coming to the Dragons next season?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a misnomer that Paul didn't have as strong a say. Most players I think that were brought in or let go, you would think the head coach. And in my short time with Paul, he definitely had a voice in that. So I obviously couldn't speak for the years prior to that. So in a similar fashion, it works now. There's a committee of 4 people, and then you bring in the finance guy when you start to work on your figures. But everyone gets to have a bit of a say and they have a voice. You talk it through. There's no one person who hasn't have an overriding say in that thing, because it's like all clubs. Anthony's there, and my goal, GM of football, everyone's job is to give Anthony the team and the support that he thinks he can help win these finals. But I guess my job in that room, and probably the GM of footy and others, is just to make sure that he's seeing the full picture, I guess, and we're questioning, I guess, his thoughts and his logic at times, and we've got to make sure that decisions are being made for what's best for the club, in the long term, not always in the short. But they're really good discussions. They're really healthy. Anthony's really great to work with. He's got really good connections through the league as well, and a lot of respect. So those things really help when it comes to recruitment, and they have helped helped a lot over the last 12 months.
Recruitment's looking a little bit better for this season and next season than it has previously. And I think if you speak to a lot of Dragons fans on the street, Ryan, I know they're quite critical of the job that Ian Millwood has done as the recruitment manager with some of the players that have been signed on big contracts in the past. And obviously you can't control what's happened in the past, but in that particular recruitment role, is there accountability for, say, Ian Millwood if a decision is made that doesn't quite work out down the track?
Well, I guess the best answer to that is there's no one person who gets to make the call on anyone who's recruited into the club, and there never has been. Yep. So it's a bit of a misnomer to think that one guy could go out and contract someone on a crazy contract without some sort of accountability or some checkpoints along the way. So that's probably not fair on Ian by any means. There is a group or a committee. It's been there for a number of years now. But the club has made some decisions that probably haven't gone well. You probably get a few right as well. You want to get a lot more right than wrong. But I think that the group that we have now is working okay. But then in saying that, I think the list this year was capable of finals as well. So I don't think I can point to the list to say that's the biggest weakness we had. It can always be better. Everything we do can be better. But I couldn't point to the list and say it was under strength. That's why we didn't make finals. But next year, I think we have got better. I think we've got some really good names. We got them fairly early as well. And we've still got room to move now. So hopefully we'll have a really good shape with these kids coming through as well, all complementing each other. I think we're in really good shape.
Ryan, how's the salary cap looking for the Dragons for 2022?
Yeah, like I said, plenty of room. Still got a bit to spend. We're not going to need to move players or anything like that. So we're basically in a really nice position where we've got some recruits, got room for some more, and we can sit and be patient and look for the right opportunity.
Ryan, the last time we spoke a little bit about the Centre of Excellence and the process that you and the club was going through in terms of getting that up and running. Can you give us an update on the Centre of Excellence at the Dragons?
Yeah, it's still a high priority. So we're still working on a number of factors behind the scenes. But I do have to say the COVID issues, I guess, and the effect they've had right across the country, particularly on government, have slowed things down. So there's things that are out of our control that have just been stalled at the moment. So we're still working a lot behind the scenes on everything we can do to keep processes moving. But we are, the governments, as you'd expect, have a few other things on their mind. So it's not necessarily right at the top of the list. But we're still hoping, we'll have some good news sooner rather than later on that.
Sean Timmins and Matthew Head, I guess furthermore to that, have been working with the Dragons Academy. Have you been pleased with the progress that's been happening there with some of the young guys and girls coming through that Dragons junior system?
Yeah, definitely have. And yeah, and you mentioned the girls as well. So it was the first time we had a women's academy as well, a Dragons female academy, which was really well received. Unfortunately, COVID came in and sort of cut things off a little bit shorter than we wanted to. That was supposed to run a little later, but yeah, it's gone really well. But like everything at the club, we will sit down at the end of the year and have a look at what we did and look at what we can do better. But yeah, as far as keeping that flow of juniors coming through, you can see the fruits of it starting to show a bit now. So we really want to make sure we keep that going into the future.
I think every fan base probably looks at sides like Melbourne and Penrith and to a lesser extent the Roosters probably of the success that those teams have had, not just on the field but also off the field. Ryan, in your opinion, what needs to change or what needs to be done at the Dragons over the next few seasons for us to be, I guess, trending in that direction to be one of the bigger boys in the NRL?
I think we need to do a lot of small things well. I don't think there's any one silver bullet that turns you from a middle of the pack team to a top 2 or 3 club. I think it's doing a lot of things well across the business. So we had a 12-month strategic plan that runs to the end of October. We're just redoing that now, taking advantage of kind of a period that's a bit stifled, I guess, for regular work. So that has every department looking at what they do, reviewing how they do it, seeing how they can do their current processes better, but what new things they can bring in to make us better. Is it the way we communicate with our members? Is it the way that we deliver partnership benefits to our sponsors? Is it the way that we take care of our staff through HR and well-being? But every department, no matter where you sit in this business, you're looking at your planning and you're planning for next year to see how you can get better. And then it's one thing to put the plan together, but it's another to make sure we measure ourselves against that and then hold ourselves accountable if we don't get there. And we've done that with the plan to this point, have had to be a bit creative and flexible because of the way COVID's had impact on things that we just couldn't really control. But we just need to keep doing that, keeping ourselves accountable, putting targets in place and right across the business. And the on-field and off-field are really strongly linked. If you're going well off-field, you can probably invest more time and resources into your on-field. Your on-field goes well, we've got bigger crowds, we've got more sponsors, and that helps your off-field. So the two do go hand in hand.
Ryan, I guess a question a little bit out of left field. In terms of the club, are they doing anything to ensure their viability, I guess you could say, such as things like other clubs have done? Like I know the Cronulla Sharks obviously own their own grounds and some of the retail development and housing and stuff around their ground, or even just looking at different revenue streams rather than the current plan of grants and sponsorship. I know it's a bit of a difficult question, you might not be able to answer it, but has anything, I guess, any progress been made in that area of the Dragons, or has that been spoken about at length before?
Yeah, 2 parts to that answer, I think. Firstly, it does get discussed. Like, it's definitely something that we know we need to be doing, and we've talked about that. The board are really conscious of that. They're doing a really good job in sort of making sure we run well as a business independently. We're not a football club that just thinks that at the end of each year we can come back and say, oh, we lost money this year, can you help us out? So they're making us run independently and more professional. So that's the first step there. And that feeds into the second, because if we're actually turning a profit, which we did last year, and hopefully even with all the issues that we're having, if we do things well, we still could turn a very small profit, but still it's better than losing money in these conditions. If we can get into that habit of making a bit of money each year, then we can start looking to invest in ourselves, and that's the goal. So we first need to just turn the boat around and get that run of profits, annual profits sort of coming in, and then we can either use our own funds if we're profitable, or 2, if the shareholders, we do look for investment into the club, it's into assets that can help us be bigger and better and stand on our own 2 feet in the future.
Looking forward to 2022, Ryan, no doubt there'll be excitement around the club, particularly with the new signings and some of the young players that have had an opportunity to prove their wares at the back end of this season. What are the goals, I guess, on the field and off the field for the Dragons next year, and what would you deem a pass mark?
Oh, look, a pass mark, it's a bit early to be thinking about pass marks. I still try to get through this season, but we want to be a club that's, at a minimum, you're playing finals, and that shouldn't be questioned. That's what we expect. We think recruits coming in, those young players getting a taste. And then you've got those guys in the middle who've been around a couple of years but are still young. Kerr, Lomax, Ford, Ravalawa, Laurie. They're mid to early 20s themselves. So it's a really good squad that's just maturing and probably coming together at a good time. And the recruits we're bringing in are also in that 25, 26 in Molo, Sua. They're around that time. I think Embo's 28, so they're not overly old. We're trying to be conscious of that and getting the right characters as well, making sure that they're good people in there as well. So look, a pass mark's tough, but we want to make sure that as a business, we're standing on our own 2 feet, generating a profit. Hopefully in 12 months' time, we've got a high performance and community centre ticking along, and that's got some real shape to it. And then I guess on field, we want to be playing finals. I think they're 3 pretty. I don't think anyone will be surprised by those goals either.
Dragons fans are probably listening, looking for a little bit of hope or a beam of light towards the end of this season, but also into next season. What's your message for them, Ryan?
I think you just got to look at our actions, I guess, as a club, and sometimes if you look at individuals or sometimes the media can grab onto some things that are a bit smaller and more individual related. But as a club, look at the way we're operating. I guess we're financially, we're being smart. We're making good decisions with our recruitment from football perspective. We are planning, so we're not doing things ad hoc. Everything's done with a plan and with the future in mind. So, if people can see what we're doing and that we're building towards something, hopefully that's enough that, come pre-season 2022, people are getting excited for the matches to come.
Ryan, always a pleasure getting to chat with you, and I really appreciate you giving up your time and being so open and honest about everything that's happening at the Dragons. We wish you and your team the best of luck for the rest of this season, and thanks so much for stopping by the Red V podcast.
No, thanks very much for having me, Jack.